Canada's Public Safety Minister is being careful with his words, saying it is irresponsible to speculate.
There would appear to be no national security connection to this particular incident.
Ralph Goodale happened to be in Toronto today to host a meeting of public safety and security ministers from G7 countries. He says the incident is unrelated to the meetings and there's no need to raise Canada's national security threat level.
I think it's important to state this. There is no information available to me at the present time that would lead us to conclude that there should be a change in risk level.
That threat level sits at medium, which is where it has been since the 2014 shooting on Parliament Hill. After that attack, major public events across the country, including Canada Day celebrations, now involve intense visible security. That level hasn't changed even after high-profile incidents like the U-Haul attack in Edmonton, the thwarted ISIS attack in Strathroy, Ontario, and the mosque shooting in Quebec City.
Our thoughts are obviously with those affected by this incident. We are still gathering information, and as soon as we can, we will share more information with Canadians.
The Prime Minister and national security agencies are monitoring the situation and cooperating with Toronto Police as it leads this investigation. The RCMP will only take over the case if it is a national security incident.
We are all unsettled and very disturbed by a situation like this. I think it's impossible not to be. It's frightening.
Tomorrow's G7 national security and public safety meetings will go ahead as planned. And while this incident is not a national security investigation, it certainly will be discussed among these allies. Katie Simpson, CBC News, Toronto.
All right, Adrienne is in London. She happens to be there on another assignment for us tonight. Adrienne, you're on the Westminster Bridge tonight, and we saw a violent attack there just this last March.
Indeed. You know, Rosie, London has had to learn very quickly how to deal with vehicle attacks and how to try to mitigate them regardless of the motivation. You're right, there was an attack here on Westminster Bridge. It was one of 3 attacks in London with vehicles in 2017, killing a dozen people, including a Canadian, Chrissy Archibald. And we'll have a look in a moment at how the United Kingdom has learned to try to mitigate some of the damage and the deaths and try to prevent some of those attacks. But first, let's take a little bit of a look at how and sometimes why vehicles are used as weapons. Quebec 2014, Martin Couture sat in a parking lot for 2 hours before stepping on the gas and ramming his vehicle into 2 Canadian soldiers. Warrant Officer Patrice Vincent was killed. Another person was injured.
The working thesis is that it's a deliberate act. With regards to how far was it planned, it's really hard to say.
Couture fled from police but was stopped and killed a short time later. Vehicles have been used for decades to kill people, but it was in 2010 when terror groups started instructing extremists on how to use rental vans and trucks. And the frequency of those kinds of attacks seems to be on the rise.
Very easy to obtain. You can steal a driver's license if you had to and still get one of these rental vehicles, so they're ubiquitous. It's a white vehicle, very hard, blends into everyday society, and it causes great damage. And not only that, if you're the driver, you're somewhat protected.
Even as police around the world are becoming more aware of the threat, the attacks have been getting deadlier. In July 2016, 86 people were killed while celebrating Bastille Day in France when a man in a rental truck plowed through a promenade. More than a dozen people died when a man in a rented van rammed into a group of pedestrians on a street in Barcelona. And London was targeted 3 times at a local mosque on the London Bridge and right here on Westminster Bridge. So as you can understand, Rosie, London has been in a bit of a panic trying to figure out what to do. So Scotland Yard, one of the things it did was examine 33 separate bridges in the city and then start to put up barriers. You see them all over the city now. Unfortunately, a decision was made last June not to put barriers on the London Bridge, but that decision was made 24 hours before the attack on the London Bridge. It's not just a physical prevention that they're looking at. The car rental agencies have said, what can we do to help? One of the things they want to try to do, and politicians are really pushing them to do this, is to have some sort of real-time cross-check with authorities so that they can look at who is trying to rent a vehicle, particularly a truck, and then try to make sure that that person doesn't appear on any sort of national watch list. Obviously, it doesn't help in all circumstances, but it's something they can do. And something remarkable here really is that the police have now been told that they can actually shoot at moving vehicles. For a long time, you couldn't do that in this country, certainly in the city, because they thought the risk to the general public would be too high. But now they realize that if someone is fleeing police in a vehicle, there's a good chance they just have to stop it no matter what. So, you know, these are changes that they feel are really urgent to make.
Really hard, though, to prevent a sole person, a lone attacker with just a vehicle, using it as a weapon. Canada obviously not immune either. So what kinds of things are authorities doing here, Adrian, from what you know?
Well, you know, if you stop and think about it, Canadians might have already noticed some of what's happening. And, you know, you go to summer festivals in Canada now, and you'll sometimes see giant dump trucks that are parked across the entrance to some of those streets. That's part of it, you know, making it difficult. A lot of times these are sort of crimes of opportunity, and if you take that opportunity away, goes the thinking, then maybe you can save some lives. Also, if you noticed in Toronto at the start of baseball season this year, the downtown core around the Rogers Stadium was basically blocked off to vehicle traffic. We never got a clear explanation from police as to why precisely they decided to do that. But, you know, with the benefit of hindsight, you realize that maybe the awareness and the fear of vehicle attacks was acute enough that they decided they had to do something. It's important to know, Rosie, that we have a statement from the company that rented that van today. It's a company called Ryder. Its statement says, in part, we are saddened by this tragic event and our deepest sympathies go out to those impacted. We take the safety and security of our entire fleet very seriously, and we are cooperating fully with authorities.